Good afternoon and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus. Today I want to speak to you about the Qurans. My collection of Qurans here. These are some of the ones that I've been reading through my popular series Without Lies Islam Dies, when we smash that false doctrine and reveal it for what it is. A filthy, toxic, badly written piece of generic garbage which leads you to nothing but evil and sin. Sorry Muslims, it's just a fact. So what I want to do today is go through the top 10 arguments that Muslims use to say that A, the Quran is true, and B, because the Quran is true, Allah must be true, and C, because of those two things, we must all be Muslims, otherwise we're bad, naughty and evil. I'm going to enjoy this one. So let's have a look, shall we, through the... I've got ChatGPT to do some of the work for me. I said, ChatGPT, please give me the 10 most prominent reasons that Muslims will use to try to convince us that Islam is true with the Quran. So that's what we're going to go through point by point. So, point number 1, divine origin and inimitability. Inimitability. So what that means is, they say this book is of divine origin. It was God that physically wrote this book. And the reason we know it was physically God that wrote this book is because it is not, you can't imitate it. There's no way you could write something this good. And in fact, Allah himself says in the book of the Quran, you can't write a surah as good as this. Show me another book that's written that's anywhere near as good as this. Okay then, Allah. This is a holy Bible. So I'm not going to read it to you, although I am tempted. This book is far superior in every single possible way to that. And although I'm not going to read it, anyone who does pick up one of these and reads it themselves will know that. And the reasons are, it is much easier to read. It is in actual order. The events happen in chronological order. Naturally, nobody needs to refile the book in order of time. There are not bits that just plainly repeat events but then get them wrong. And there is no one who thinks that God is Satan throughout the entire 4,100 pages. Nobody sees God and goes, oh, it's Satan, and runs away in fear to their wife, like Muhammad does. So, is this book... Well, let's start with an actual, because that one's written by a Christian. Let's start with the Tajweed Quran. This is the most recent one that I was actually requested to use this one by angry, pissed off Muslims, so that's why I started using this one in the series Without Lies Islam Dies. So let's start with that. Can we see if this book is of divine origin and whether it can be imitated by human hands? Let's have a look. So the first thing it says is, in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, we have without doubt sent down this message and we will assuredly guard it. So if this is divinely written, this will be true, no? This will be 100% factual all of the time. In the name of Allah. Oh, that's interesting. So Allah didn't actually write this then. It's written in the name of Allah. In the name of Allah, we have without doubt sent down this message. So unless Allah has like 7 different bodies that he uses, or maybe 3, if he's trying to imitate the Trinity, perhaps. In the name of Allah says Allah didn't write this. So it isn't of divine origin because the divine guy that you're claiming it was written by is Allah. But it's in the name of Allah, not by Allah. And then in the second sentence it says, we have without doubt sent this message down. Like we, up here, angels of Allah, have sent this message down to you, humans down on earth. And we will assuredly guard it. So what that says to me is the first line, in the name of Allah, says it wasn't written by Allah. We have without doubt sent down the message, say it wasn't sent down by Allah. So Allah didn't write it, Allah didn't gift it to humanity, it was his angels. Oh, and it says we will assuredly guard it. Who are you guarding it from? Considering when this was supposedly written, and it was sent down in the desert to Muhammad, is what they believe. Nobody knew about it. So who are you guarding it from if no one knows about it? Perhaps this was actually written far later than is claimed, and it was written as an antithesis to an existing book of truth, which is called the Holy Bible. And you knew when these guys recognised that you ripped off their holy text in order to make your perverted, filthy garbage of the Quran out of it, they would then want to attack it. So then it would need to be guarded. So no, point 1, divine origin and inimitability, false. Conclusively proven by this very Quran here. And we move on. Point number 2. Preservation and authenticity. Is it perfectly preserved, as Muslims will claim, and does this give it authenticity? So, Muslims argue that the Quran has been perfectly preserved since its original revelation in the 7th century. And this is unlike any other religious text. They believe it's never been altered, it's never been corrupted, it's never lost any content, it's got all the original stuff in there, and it is perfectly preserved word for word, exactly the same as when it was first written. But can we prove this to be false? Well, I think we can. Let's go back to our Quran. So, later down on the first page that we just were reading from, its letters were vowelized during the days of Al-Imam Ali, may honour Allah him. Dots were placed above the letters which resemble each other during the days of Caliph Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. Hang on a minute, so you're telling me in the first verse it was perfectly preserved when the angels sent it down in the name of Allah, it wasn't Allah. And you've actually given me this Arabic bit here, which says that in Arabic. Presumably that's the perfectly preserved bit, yeah? That's why you got it there. But it's got dots and vowels in it. But you just told me its letters were vowelized during the days of Al-Imam Ali. And the dots were placed on the letters during the days of Caliph Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. But these guys didn't exist at the same time. And actually we know from historical document and fact, original Arabic had no vowels and no dots, i.e. that is the language it would have been written in originally. But we can see from the way that it is now, i.e. that bit there, it does have dots and vowels included within it. So if it has got dots and vowels now, O Muslims, but it didn't in the 7th century, then it is not perfectly preserved because it has had bits added, i.e. it has had alteration and it has been corrupted. And as a bonus, we know it has lost content over time because the hadiths which are mentioned in here, which you also believe, O Muslims, your hadiths say there were previously more verses, but they accidentally got eaten by a goat. This is true, by the way. One of the hadiths says, when the Prophet Muhammad died, they were we're so upset by Prophet Muhammad dying. So they were so upset and mournful of Prophet Muhammad dying that they all ran out to his body, because he got poisoned to death by a slave girl who he was abusing. Champion slave girl of the Jews. She killed Muhammad with a poison meal and he died in horrible pain like a dog. They all ran out to go, oh, what's this smelly dead body doing? Oh, it's Muhammad. Oh, and they started crying. And while they were all distracted out there, a sneaky little goat got into the house and went underneath the pillow where the Quran verses that had been written down were held. Don't know why you'd keep them under your pillow if they're important religious documents, but anyway, that's what it says. And the goat proceeded to eat the Quran verses. So those Quran verses are no longer available and they're not in the Quran. So we know. Point number 2, is it perfectly preserved? Is this a testament to its authenticity? Flipping well, no, because it has lost content over time, it has been corrupted and altered, and it is not in even the same language as the original 7th century revelation from Allah. And we know it wasn't even from Allah anyway. It says it's in the name of Allah, given by the angels. So no, it's not perfectly preserved, and it is not authentic. Sorry, Muslims. Look, I'm being cruel to be kind here, Muslims. You need to know this stuff because you follow this filth, this garbage, your false religion, you do all kinds of mischief as a result of it. You're praying to Satan, thinking that it's God. I'm doing you a favour. If you are any sort of intelligent human being, with an inquiring mind and a set of eyes that work, and you can understand, like, you're not a stupid Muslim child, if you can understand language, this stuff is factual. You can look this up yourself. You can get a Quran like this, or in fact any of these versions will do the same job, and then you can cross-reference that with hadiths, historical fact, and your own intelligence, and you will find out. Is the Quran perfectly preserved? Flipping well, no. Is this a testament to its authenticity? Absolutely not. It is the opposite. It is proof that it is a false doctrine that has been altered and corrupted and has lost content over time. Therefore, even though it is claimed in the time of the Prophet that the Quran was meticulously memorized, it wasn't. That is why they wrote it down. Like, how much of a flaming idiot do you need to be? Like, you need to be a complete retard to believe that the Quran and its perfectly preserved and authenticity is true before you look at the evidence, I mean. Like, who memorizes such a boring, badly written book full of rubbish? And I even did a video. I said, right, I'll give any Muslim £1,000 cash if they can stand or they can sit in a chair in front of me in full view, so I know they don't have an earpiece in. I know they're not cheating in any way. They have to put a blindfold on, shut their eyes, and recite the entire Quran from start to finish, word for word to me. I will stand here and I will check every word. If they can do it, I will hand them £1,000 in cash and they'll be on their way. Did I get any takers for this? No, I did not. So we know they don't memorize it, they just lie about it, i.e. they lie about their own false doctrines because it is false and they need to lie. It is not perfectly preserved and it does not have authenticity, therefore it is not a divine holy text. So we move on to point number 3. Right. Point number 3, linguistic mastery. Do we think... This is so ridiculous. Do we think the Quran of the Muslims has linguistic mastery? Is it so lovely and beautifully written that it must be written by God? So the argument goes like this. The Quran is often lauded for its unparalleled linguistic style, poetic rhythm, and eloquence in Arabic. Arabic speakers of the 7th century who were masters of poetry could not replicate its style or content. Which is weird, because I could have sworn a minute ago, when we were reading this, just let me refresh my memory here, its letters were vowelized during the days of Al-Imam Ali. So he could replicate it, because he replicated it and added vowels so people could actually read it. So he made it better. It wasn't perfect. In fact, it was fairly bad. So he made vowels and dots in there to make it better, and all of these Qurans have that. No Muslims are using Arabic script with no vowels and dots in it these days. 0% of Islam are using that. So none of them have the original perfectly preserved text. They're all using these. Not only that, dots were placed above the letters which resemble each other during the days of Caliph Abdul Malik. So, look, Muslims, before we start shredding how poorly written this is and how it has virtually no punctuation, no line breaks, and repeats itself and makes mistakes in its repetition, can we all just agree that the fact that it has vowels and dots on the letters is an indication that it is not perfectly preserved because the original does not have those features? Can we all just agree that? No? Of course not, because you are liars and you are hypocrites and you are following a false doctrine which you will defend to the death with your eyes completely covered. But anyway, so let's pick on the unparalleled linguistic style and poetic rhythm. So let's just pick a random piece. Tawbah, verse 29. Fight those who... Oh, this is a good one. I'm glad I randomly picked this one. Thank you, God, for leading me here, not Allah. Fight those who believe not in Allah, nor the last day, nor that the forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and his apostle, it's Muhammad, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, even if they are people of the book. Hang on a minute. Didn't you... This is off topic, but this is important, right? When they say the people of the book here, who they're going to fight until the last day and kill, they're talking about Christians and Jews. They're the people of the book. That's who Allah is calling the people of the book. The people of the book to Allah and the Quran is Jews and Christians. But if we go back to Al-Baqarah, see, this is where studying the Quran as a Christian will really serve you well, because I did this from memory. Al-Baqarah, verse number 2. This is the book, in its guidance, sure and without doubt, to those who fear Allah. So if this is the book, and it's more true and it predates all the other books, and this is the divine text and the other ones aren't, why is Allah on verse 29 of Tawbah saying Jews and Christians are people of the book? If this is the book, and its linguistic mastery is proof of that, Why is even Allah saying people of the book is not Muslims? It's everyone else. It's Christians, Jews, and everyone who follows their book. That's interesting, isn't it? So anyway, back on point. Is the linguistic mastery of this book divine? And I will refer you to that first sentence. This sentence is sentence number 3, page 1 of the Tajweed Quran. It has no punctuation in it, apart from an apostrophe in the capitalized Quran. It is of his glory's gifts upon us that he made his Quran easy to comprehend. Does that sound poetically rhythmic? Does that sound unparalleled, linguistically perfect and eloquent? No, it doesn't. It sounds terrible. It's very poorly written. This guy who is like a Muslim cleric, a scholar of the Islamic world, has the literacy of a 7-year-old. This might as well be written by his wife, who's probably 7. So I think we need to conclude this point quickly and move on. But we can see, no, the Quran does not have linguistic mastery. It is not eloquent. It is not unparalleled, poetically rhythmic. It's not even accurate. It is nonsense. Poorly written nonsense with a lack of grammatical, syntactical eloquence like it claims. And it is boring to read. So it's not well written at all. Thus we know it is not written by a divine creative God. It is written by a moron. And Muslims, I will remind you, you must be total flipping morons yourself and retards if you think this stuff is linguistic mastery. It just is not. Like, we've seen that in like 3 or 4 verses. Like, we don't need to read any more than that to know this book is garbage. Okay? And anyway, we move on to the next one. Number 4. Scientific consistency. Oh, this is just under... ChatGPT comes out with some gems. So remember, this is ChatGPT that's given me these 10 points that Muslims argue with. And I know these to be true. I've heard these before. So point number 4, scientific consistency. And the argument goes as such. Some Muslims argue that the Quran contains knowledge about natural phenomena, biology, astrology, embryology, and more. And this is evidence of the Quran's divine religion, as it reflects insights that Muhammad, as an illiterate man, could not have known. So let's go through some of the revelations that are within the Quran that presumably are 100% factually accurate and not found anywhere before or since. So one of the things that Allah says in Al-Nujra, he says, Allah put all the stars and planets and constellations in the heavens, and he set them all perfectly so that everyone can see them all at the same time. Now, can you see all the stars and planets at the same time if you look up at the sky? No. If there are no clouds, if it's perfect visibility, and you have perfect eyesight, and you have a telescope, can you see all the stars and planets even under those conditions? No. And the reason is because some will be behind others, so they're not visible. And if you're looking north, the stars in the south won't be visible to you at all because you're looking in the opposite direction to where they are. So because you have a limited field of view as a, two-eyed human being, you cannot see the stars, planets, constellations at all times. So when Allah says he put them in the sky so we can all befool their greatness and look at them equally and see them all at the same time, scientifically he is incorrect. And actually, another thing, this isn't, ChatGPT hasn't added this, but this is the thing I know. Another scientific consensus that Muslims will come to, they say the Prophet Muhammad's life being perfect, having never made a mistake, and upholding the laws of Sharia, the commandments of Allah, throughout his life, from the first time he sees Allah, this is scientific evidence of the Quran being true. But what they don't realise, because they haven't read their own bloody books, is this. There are many hadiths, indeed some that are referenced in the Quran, that tell us the first meeting that Muhammad had with Allah, when Allah appeared to him for the first time. So, I relate to this a lot because Jesus appeared to me, and I could tell you about that. But first I'm going to tell you about Muhammad's version when he met Allah. Allah appeared to him when he was in a tent, and Allah was like in a puff of smoke and was like, I am Allah, all gracious and merciful God. I'm going to command you as my prophet. You will lead the human species. Or, he said something like that. What do you think Muhammad does? Muhammad sees him and goes, and then runs away. He flees out the tent in absolute terror. And he cries, cry. Goes all the way back to his wife, who's like a 9-year-old or something. So he goes back to his wife. And he goes, oh, wife, save me. I've been beset by Satan. I've been bewitched by Satan. So how is this scientific evidence of the consistency of the Quran when Muhammad, the most important prophet of the religion of Islam, on his initial meeting with who he now says is Allah, he himself thought Allah was Satan? And how did he know what Satan was, and how did he know what Satan was called, if he was indeed illiterate? Because the only way he would have known is if he had read the Old Testament, the Torah of the Jews, or, the Holy Bible. So scientifically we can conclude from that first meeting, which is recorded in the Hadiths, referenced in the Quran, A. Muhammad already knew about Satan and what his name was before Allah appeared to tell him, i.e. people already knew of the revelation which Allah is now trying to plagiarize and claim. Scientifically, we can prove and know that because we have such books as the Torah, the Talmud, and the Holy Bible. Muhammad proved it because he said, this guy's obviously Satan, and ran away. Allah. Point number 2. When he ran back to his wife, oh, wife, help me, I've been bewitched by Satan. In a Muslim way. Oh, help me, wife, I have been bewitched by Satan. It would have sounded like that. So when he was doing that, and his wife went, there, Muhammad. Don't worry about it, Muhammad, I'm sure it was Allah. So it went something like that. When his wife convinced him it wasn't actually Satan, it was Allah, he broke the commandments of Sharia by doing that, didn't he? See, Muslims, they don't read their own scriptures and their own hadiths, or they would know this. Because it says in Sharia, and it's recorded in Al-Nisa, book number 4 of the Quran of the Muslims, a woman's testimony is worth less than half of that of a man's. So if you are a man and a woman is making a testimony to you, i.e. a testimony that you didn't actually see Satan, you're incorrect, and what you actually saw was Allah, God, you need 2 women to say that. Otherwise, you have to tell them they're wrong. Allah has commanded you this. So, point 1, Allah appears to Muhammad. Muhammad recognizes him as Satan and runs away in fear. Point 2, the first thing he does is cry to his wife and accept her testimony, despite that Sharia commands that he cannot. And the third thing that happens is he then goes out and convinces all his brother Muslims that they're going to now be Muslims, and all his Arabs that they're going to be Muslims, based on the testimony that he cannot accept of a woman who has never even seen either one. So we know scientifically, through the evidence in the Quran and the Hadiths only, like I'm not using anything else apart from their own sources, because they'll bitch and whinge otherwise. No, the Quran does not have scientific consistency. Not only that, it physically proves and demonstrates through the Hadith and the Quran Muhammad's life was not perfect because his initial meeting with Allah, he made the mistake of thinking that it was Satan. And you might think, well, it really was Satan. He was right. Okay, then when he went back to his wife and she convinced him that it was actually Allah, then that was a mistake. So either way you swing it, Muslims, Muhammad made a mistake on day 1, and then that led to the whole religion being created and this book being written down and the hadiths supporting it and everything we know today as the cult of Islam. So in conclusion of point 4, does this book or any of these books have scientific consistency? Hell no! They have the opposite of scientific consistency. They have inconclusive rubbish and contradictory garbage. Muslims. And we move on. Number 5. Internal consistency and coherence. So this is an interesting one. This is this kind of contradicts point 1, which, I mean, if I was writing this and I was a Muslim, I would be kind of concerned about. But obviously, nothing to see here. That's how they like to see their own religion, because they don't want to admit that it's false. So this is how the argument goes for point 5. Despite being revealed over 23 years, Muslims will argue that the Quran is remarkably consistent and coherent. They believe that the Quran addresses various complex subjects, law, theology, history, ethics, without contradictions, which they see as a sign of divine authorship. So, can we say that these books here have internal consistency and coherence, even though they were revealed over 23 years, which, by the way, is the opposite of what point 1 was trying to tell us, that they were revealed in a day to Muhammad? And can we see that it gives complex subjects, law, theology, history, ethics, without contradiction? Well, let's have a look. So, oh no, we already did it. We already went through the bit. So, the bit we went through is verse 2 of Al-Baqarah. Let's go through it again, because it's just great fun shredding the false doctrines, isn't it? So, verse 2 of Al-Baqarah says, "This is the book in its guidance sure and without doubt to those who fear God." Keep in mind, book, no it wasn't. God, no it wasn't. Then we look to another different Quran, which also, by the way, claims on the first page that this is perfectly preserved. The internal consistency should be there. And then we look at Al-Baqarah verse 2 here. "This is the book, in its guidance sure and without doubt to those who fear Allah." So if we have internal consistency and coherence, why does this one say Allah, but this one say God? Why do they both make out the Quran was a book when it was first delivered, despite the fact that we know from reading this it wasn't, and it didn't have vowels and dots, O Muslims? Pray tell, how is that consistent and coherent? Unless you're a stupid, retarded Muslim. Is that what you are? I would like to think you weren't. So if you are not, please rub those brain cells together, generate a little heat to get them working again, and figure it out. The Quran is trash, false nonsense, evil garbage that is sending you to hell for having done this stuff, inflicting the misery of Islam on the rest of us. Use your own free will. Use your wit, your unique character as a human being. You have that. Even though you pray to Allah to take it away, He can't. You control yourself. Control yourself out of this religious garbage and this false doctrines. Just be an atheist. You know, I'm not saying you have to be a Christian. You don't have to follow the truth in this book, which would be beneficial for you, which is what you think this is. If you read this, you'd recognise this has all this stuff. This actually does visibly have all these things. But you will never know until you read it and pray to Jesus. So, we'll leave it there and we will move on to the next one, point number 6. Well done, ChatGPT. So ChatGPT's point number 6 is historical accuracy. So let's go through the argument. I'm going to enjoy this one. Many Muslims point to the Quran's descriptions of past civilizations, events and figures such as ancient Egypt to the prophets Muhammad and Noah, and historical figures like Pharaoh, which they argue have been confirmed by archaeological findings. So, can we say this is the case? Do these books, the Qurans, indicate that there are descriptions of past events, civilizations and figures like the prophets, which are accurate to what we know today to be true? Well, we've already seen that God has, he's made himself God more recently. Originally he was called Allah, he wasn't called God. Now he's trying to usurp the name of God, make himself God. So we know that's one historical inaccuracy. But with regard to Egypt, like it mentions, if you've read Al-Baqarah, you'll know. This is what happens in Egypt. The Pharaoh has taken the Jews captive with Moses as their leader, so they're all slaves in Egypt. And the reason why Egypt and the Pharaoh have taken the Jews captive, because they don't really know anything about the Jews, Allah has commanded them to do this. Allah is behind the Pharaoh telling him what to do, even though later on he's going to claim the Pharaoh was evil. The Pharaoh was under his command, and we know this because Allah and his angels are throughout this story when you read it. So what happens is Allah appears And he says to the Pharaoh, don't listen to this Moses guy. He's false and he's full of rubbish and he follows a false god. Listen to me. Pharaoh goes, okay, we'll listen to you then. And then the Moses thing happens. So Moses and his Jews are in captivity, and Moses goes, Pharaoh, let my people go. God has commanded me to give you this message. You will get 4 warnings, then you'll get 7 plagues, and then you will all be killed if you don't let the Jews on their way. But if you let them go, there'll be no punishment for you. Just let us go. Doesn't have to be trouble. And the Pharaoh thinks, oh, I don't know about this. What do you think, Allah? And Allah goes, no, don't let them go. So Pharaoh goes, no, I'm not letting you go. And I think I'll just keep you as slaves. So then the 7 plagues befall Egypt. And they have famines, they have droughts, they have water turning into blood, they have locusts, frogs, they have all kinds of things, bad weather. And the final plague that they get, all their firstborn sons will die. And then after this, the Pharaoh goes, okay, yeah, I'll let you go. You know, I don't want any more plagues. Now, all this stuff's happened. Everyone's dead. There's famine. There's all this horrible stuff's happening. So we'll let you go. But that's not what happens in the Quran. What happens in the Quran is the Jews and Moses are arguing as slaves. And all the Jews turn to Moses and go, we don't believe in you. We don't believe in your God. We want to see this God for ourselves, or we won't believe that he's true. And then when they say that, Allah appears in the clouds and goes, I will smite you, O evil Jews. Lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt. Kills them all completely dead with lightning bolts, including Moses. I'm not kidding you. This is what it says. This is the Quran version of the Moses story. So Moses and all the Jews are laying dead on the ground. They're all completely massacred by lightning bolts. And then Allah goes, well, I think they've learned their lesson. Raise them up, raise them up, raise them up, raise them up, raise them up. And he raises them all up to perfect health again. And then they're all like stood there going, how am I alive? This is a miracle. Wow, how is this a thing? And then Allah says, now do you want to be Muslims? And they go, nah, we're okay. We've got our God. This is factually what the Quran is. This is written in the Quran. So historical accuracy. Bearing in mind we have many previous accounts that predate the Quran which tell us what the Moses story is. And they all agree with each other that that did not happen. There was no lightning bolts. Can we say that there is historical accuracy with Egypt like it claims here? Hell no, we cannot. So we say it's inaccurate. And when it says the prophets, Moses, Abraham, Noah, notice how it says the prophets, example, Moses, Abraham, and Noah. Now, how are these guys named in the Quran? Is Moses called Moses in the Quran? No, he's called Musa, as in Musalim. That's where the word Musalim comes from. Musa meaning Moses, Alim meaning of the genealogy of. So if you are a Musa Alim, it means you are from the family of Moses. So how are these people the family of Moses if Moses was alive there as a slave and escaped with his sons, but they didn't come with him? Why did the Pharaoh take him captive at all? If Allah was there commanding him, it wouldn't have happened. So we know historical accuracy, no. Accuracy with the retelling of the prophets, no. Accuracy of the retelling of Egypt, hell no. Accuracy of the retelling of the Moses story, hell no. And just as a little bonus, this will be important for the next one, Allah makes a prophecy as Moses and the Jews are escaping across the sea. So here's how the Quran tells it, and you will enjoy this, especially if you're a Jew. Moses commands the sea to open at the behest of God's miracles. You know, God's told him to do it and he does it, and the seas part. You know, the water is like that, so there's like a big trench down the middle. So they start walking down the middle of the trench. All the Jews and the kids of the Jews and Moses are all walking down there. Aaron, who is supposedly at this point in Egypt writing the Quran, or doing the Islam stuff, he's with them, he's going. So they're all going across the sea and they're nearly at the other side, and Allah is enraged by this. He loses his temper because he originally prophesies, I will not let these guys escape. I will kill them if they don't want to be slaves of mine in Islam. So straight away we know Allah made an incorrect prophecy there because he said they weren't going to escape. He was going to kill them. They've just escaped. So he stands on the seashore and he says to the Pharaoh, get your heavily armed soldiers to kill those Jews. They cannot escape, because obviously his prophecy will be wrong in future. So he wants them dead. So the Pharaoh does what he's told, sends the soldiers across the sea. And they're closing fast on the escaping Israelites and Moses, who don't have any weapons. You know, they were slaves 5 minutes ago. They've got like staffs and a couple of books. And, you know, they've got a couple of things that slaves have. They don't have any weapons. Moses holds aloft his staff and bangs it on the ground, and then the sea crashes in and drowns all the Egyptian soldiers dead, because they've all got heavily armoured. You know, they're heavily armoured. They've got big swords and axes and stuff, so they can't swim. So the sea comes in, drowns them. All the Egyptian soldiers are immediately dead, and the Jews didn't even draw a sword. Like, they defeated the entire Egyptian army and Allah without even looking at them or drawing a sword, through God's miracles through Moses. And at this point, Allah stood on the other side watching the Israelites escape, and they're all going, yeah, woo! They're all cheering to their God, and they're saying, right, we're going to set up Israel now, guys, so we're not slaves anymore, we're free now, thanks God. God says, don't take revenge on them, just, you know, build Israel and you'll be fine, I'll look after you, you'll be a holy land, you'll make a great nation. So they go and do that. As they're walking away, counting their blessings of God, Allah, not God, is stood on the other side of the shore, and he makes a second prophecy. Guess what his prophecy is? And this is in the Quran. I quote, this is Allah in a quote bubble, in speech bubbles in the Quran, saying to the back of the escaping Jews what his prophecy is. He goes, you Jews, I will destroy you all. I will destroy Israel in future. Every one of you will die, you stupid, evil dogs. That's his prophecy. Oh no, not dogs. He says, you filthy, evil Jew pigs. That's what he calls them. So Allah's prophecy is the filthy, evil Jew pigs will all die. Every single one of them will die, and Israel will be destroyed. And then he says, my justice upon the Jews will be swift. Now, if you know anything about historical accuracy, which is what this point is, remember, you will know that this is happening at a time which we know. And if you go by these books, this is happening at the end of the 7th century. So, how is it swift, O Muslims, if at the end of the 7th century, Allah personally, in quote bubbles in your Quran, said he was going to destroy Israel and kill all the Jews, after not managing to kill them when he had them as slaves? That was his original prophecy, that they wouldn't escape. So how is it historically accurate to say this book is true when he said they wouldn't escape, but they did? He said he would destroy Israel and all the Jews quickly, but they're still alive today, 2,000 years later, nearly 2,000 years later. How can we say it has historical accuracy and argue that it's divinely true? Well, we cannot. Therefore, you have to be a complete retard, idiot, moron Muslim to believe on this stuff, and you should not. You should just admit that it's wrong, false doctrine, and that the truth can be found in here, the Holy Bible. So, we move on. Point number 7. Moral and ethical teachings. Does the Quran have good moral and ethical teachings? Muslims will say yes, it's the best morals, the best ethical teachings. The only moral and ethical teachings in the world that are worth a damn are found in these books here, the Qurans of the Muslims. So the argument goes like this. Muslims often emphasize that the Quran's moral and ethical guidance, which they argue promotes justice, equality, compassion and societal harmony, that they view the teachings of the Quran as universally applicable, promoting values that can help individuals and societies flourish. Get that? This is what they believe. This is what Muslims use to argue that the Quran is true. The Quran is universally applicable and promotes values that help individuals and societies flourish because it has emphasis on moral and ethical guidance which promotes justice, equality and compassion. That's what they think. But can we back this up from reading the Quran? That's the question. I'm going to enjoy this one. So, to start with, is the Quran universally applicable? Considering it's written in Arabic and it makes enemies of virtually everybody else on earth. No, it is not universally applicable. Jews cannot read the Quran and think that it's the truth because it actually has Allah, as we just went through, saying, I'm going to kill you all swiftly and I'm going to burn Israel to the ground. And by the way, I wanted you as slaves, which is still true. So how can you say it's universally applicable, considering universal means everyone, including Jews and Christians, when Jews and Christians are the enemies of Allah and Allah makes them enemies? So it's not universally applicable. And it doesn't promote values that help individuals and societies flourish, As we know, if we look across the world today, where are the societies and individuals which are most flourishing? They are outside of the Muslim countries. And in fact, all the war, disease, poverty and inequalities are happening in the Muslim countries who follow this filthy garbage, this false doctrine of Allah, who is Satan. So we know for a fact that's not true, even though Muslims are going to try and argue this. But then I think, well, they're only arguing it because they got told to. Remember, they don't care what you believe. They don't care whether you agree with them. They're not trying to convert you. They are doing dawah, which is a service of loyalty to their Lord, who is Satan, Allah. So they don't care whether it works or not, as long as they do it. So in conclusion of point 7, does the Quran have good moral and ethical teachings? Hell no, it's the worst. It's got immoral, unethical teachings. It is toxic, poisonous brainwashing, death cult rubbish that no moral, ethical, intelligent, witty human being would ever take on and believe, much less enact through their behaviours. So no. And we move on to point number 8. So we're getting near the end now. We're going to get the last 3 are going to be the best ones, I feel. So let's go. Keep in mind what we went through in the last 2. Number 8. Fulfilled prophecies. And the argument goes like this. Some Muslims point to the verses in the Quran in that they interpret as prophecies which have been fulfilled. For example, the victory of the Romans over the Persians in Surah Al-Rum is often cited as a prophecy fulfilled within a specific time frame after it had been revealed. So, does this prove that Allah fulfills his prophecies and that he fulfills prophecies which other books don't do? That's the question. So, first of all, I want to draw you back to the Moses prophecies that Allah makes at the beginning of Al-Baqarah, like the first proper book of the first decent surah after Al-Fatiha. Allah first says, these Jews are going to be my slaves, and if they try and escape, I will kill them. Doesn't happen. They do escape, and they are alive. Second, he says, I will destroy Israel, and every single Jew will die. This is my prophecy. It will be swift. 1800 years later, no, Israel is not destroyed. No, the Jews are not all killed. So that's 2 prophecies he's got wrong. Then in the next book in Al-Imran, he says, oh, my desert insurgents, you will go and invade Israel now in the desert. You will beat Goliath, then you'll beat King David, then you will raise their city walls to the floor, to rubble, and you will recover the Ark of the Covenant, which is actually mine, says Allah, and this is the proof that I am real. That's my prophecy, go. But what actually happens? This is in the Quran as well. David comes out of Israel and he kills Goliath. And then he stands over the dead body and says, thank you, God, who is not Allah, for letting me beat Goliath with a simple sling and a rock when he had a huge army. Now I'm going to go back into Israel and I'm going to consult my holy book, which is the Ark of the Covenant. So he goes in, consults his Ark of the Covenant, shuts the drawbridge, and Israel is safe again. Goliath is dead. But the prophecy of Allah was that his desert insurgents were going to do that. So where are the insurgents at this point? Well, they're hiding like a bunch of cowards behind a rock. They haven't even been spotted yet. They saw Goliath and went, we can't fight that guy. He's too big and scary. We're not tough enough to kill Goliath. Who is tough enough to kill Goliath? And Allah says, you guys are. Go and kill him now. Invade Israel after you've killed Goliath. Kill all the Israelites. Then get back my Ark of the Covenant. That's his prophecy. Which does not happen. And in his own words doesn't happen. So we know 3 times in 3 books, Allah gets his prophecies completely wrong. Not only does he get his prophecies completely wrong, the opposite things happen. So no, you cannot use fulfilled prophecies, Muslims, unless you are flipping dumb. Is that what you are? Are you dumb? No, you're just stubborn and ignorant. So figure it out. Your Quran is a false doctrine, full of nonsense and lies. And the more you talk from this book, the more your mouth will lie just the same. Okay? Oh yeah, and the thing about the Romans, because I can already hear Muslims going, oh, this evil Jew apostate, he hasn't mentioned the Romans. Right. The victory of the Romans over the Persians, think about it, Muslims. The Roman army is the predominant kingdom and power in the world at that time. There are millions of Roman soldiers everywhere, all over the place at this point. They're on a conquest. They are very well trained. They are extremely well equipped. They are extremely well motivated, and they are led by genius army generals who have thousands of battles behind them, supported by technological weapons. You know, they have trebuchets and stuff, and things like that. They are invading Persia after Persia have just had 2 unsuccessful defeats in wars against their neighbours. They do not have good leadership, they do not have good morale, they do not have good equipment, and they are not well supplied. And they are knackered and half dead. They've just been beaten twice in a war. So does it take a genius or God to say, these invading Romans who are rushing at Persia and will be there in like a couple of weeks are going to beat these guys? No, any idiot could have done that. So you must be an idiot if you think that you need to be God to predict that a far larger, superior, better trained, more motivated force of Romans is not going to wipe out this small ragtag, not prepared, knackered and on death's door bunch of Persians. And then you think that it's God that... Just figure it out, Muslims. Like, come on. You are not this stupid. I know you're not. I have faith in your humanity that you are more intelligent than you let on. And the thing that limits your intelligence and your morality is your adherence to this crap. So flipping well, throw it away in the trash where it belongs and get a real scripture, like a proper man's book. You know, like the Holy Bible. So anyway, we move on to number 9. The life and character of the Prophet Muhammad. So the argument goes like this. Muslims believe Muhammad's character and life and his lack of formal education further bolster the argument that Quran could not have been his own creation because it is too good. They argue the sincerity, honesty and dedication to the message support the idea that the Quran must have come from a divine source, not from human intervention. So what they're effectively saying here is Muhammad's life and character, because he did everything in the Quran and he wrote the Quran and was illiterate, prove that the Quran must therefore be divine. But we've already gone through. He didn't actually write it himself. He just lied about it and claimed that he did. And we know because it says in here, in his own words, that it was actually dictated from Allah to the angels. Then sent down as a vocal message from the angels to some bloke on the world. Then from some bloke on the world to Muhammad. And then from Muhammad to someone else who wrote it. And then it had vowels and dots added later by, Caliph Abdul Marwan and the other guy, Ali, Imam Ali, whatever his name was, those guys. And then finally it was translated into English and written here. So it is not perfectly preserved. It is not written by Muhammad. And since he first saw Allah and thought it was Satan, then broke Sharia by allowing his wife to convince him that he had made a mistake, and then went on and made the false doctrine into a formal religion, we know the life and character of Prophet Muhammad sucks. It doesn't prove divinity. It proves stupidity. It proves flagrant idiocy. I don't think any more needs to be said about that point. So we move on to the final of the 10 points. Global influence and impact. Does the Quran have global influence and a good impact on the world? This is the last thing that we will go through that Muslims will argue. So the argument goes like this. Muslims argue that the Quran's profound influence on individuals and civilizations throughout history is further evidence of its divine nature. The transformative effect it has had on countless lives and societies is seen as a testimony to its power and authenticity. So, let's go from that last word forward. Authenticity and power. We've already gone through how it does not have authenticity. Muslims have to falsify the authenticity because it doesn't have any. And it doesn't have any power. The power in it is the power of the lies which Muslims use in order to spread this filth. So we know authentic power, no. The transformative effect it has had on countless lives and societies. Well, I think we already went through that the effect that Islam has had upon the societies it infects is not good. And we can see the ones that it even mentions. Egypt. In the 5th century the Egyptian kingdom was at its height, before Islam, before Arabs and Allah turned up. Egypt was such a large kingdom, it was split into two because it had so many people. So you had an upper kingdom, you had a lower kingdom. And between the two kingdoms was a mediator, and that mediator was Thoth. Now, Thoth was typified by a big statue which sat upon a large black cube with a gold trim round the top of it. And upon his head was a crescent moon and a star, indicating that he is of the moon and the stars. Thoth is the child of God. That's why they worshipped him. He was just a human. Then Allah turns up and burns all the temples, has the Pharaoh burn all the temples down. This is in here as well. So he gets rid of all their gods. The higher and lower kingdom of Egypt are destroyed. All the symbology of Egypt is destroyed and banned. They're not allowed to do that anymore. But for some reason they keep the star and the crescent and the black cube of Thoth. And actually they now say that is the Kaaba cube. And these are the signs of Islam and of Allah. So how can we say the transformative effect of Islam and the Quran is good on that society, when since that point, bearing in mind it was bigger than the Roman Empire originally, when it was two kingdoms, Egypt was the largest, most powerful, rich kingdom on earth with the best technology, writings and everything else. The second Allah turns up, it dive-bombed into insecurity. And even today, Egypt is one of the poorest countries. And the only way that it survives is through tourism. Westerners going there and spending their money. So we know, global influence and impact, the Quran has a negative global impact, a negative global influence, and the reason is because it has this false doctrine full of lies and nonsense, and it pushes out the potential for any growth or improvement in its people. So, 52 minutes straight, I think we get to the end of this video now. In summary and conclusion of this entire video, the Quran is demonstrably, factually, evidentially false doctrine. O Muslims, I'm talking to you. These are false doctrines that you believe in. We can see that the 10 main points that you use to argue are also lies and false. And if you continue to use them in debates past this point, we shall know when you speak them, you personally are a liar and a hypocrite. Two of the worst things that a human being can ever be. That will be you if you continue to persist using these false arguments to prop up your false doctrine, to spread your false religion for your false God, Allah, who is actually Satan. But if you want my advice, Muslims and anyone else, either be an atheist and just figure things out normally that way, or if you want to get a head start on the truth, read the Holy Bible, this book here, and pray to Jesus Christ of Nazareth, not Isa, the false Christ, the other guy who was born in Nazareth, who was not a Muslim. Jesus Christ of Nazareth and the Holy Bible will give you the truth you seek, and then you won't need to lie. You won't need to argue and debate. You won't need to spread false doctrines or threaten to kill the Jews. You won't be following a guy who doesn't know arse from elbow and makes really bad prophecies and leads your countries to ruin and poverty and war, and makes you, individual Muslims, look like retards. And that's the end of this video. So, I hope you've really enjoyed listening to that and you learnt something. God bless you all, and I'll see you, lovely people, in the next one. Bye now. Can't believe this video is an hour long, and I actually punctuated it. Like, I took out most of the information, and the minimal scraps we are left with still demolishes the Quran of the Muslims as the false nonsense book that it is. So that's all for now. God bless you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!